The black Mercedes pulled up to the curb exactly at 6:30 in the evening. Victoria checked her diamond watch for the third time in 5 minutes. She hated being late, especially tonight. The annual Lighthouse Charity Gala was one of the biggest events of the season, and this year she was receiving an award. The Humanitarian of the Year award. She'd already practiced her acceptance speech twice that morning. A man in his early 30s stepped out from the driver's seat and walked around to open her door. He was dressed in a simple black suit, clean and pressed, with kind eyes that crinkled slightly at the corners when he nodded at her. "Good evening, Mrs. Ashford. I'm Daniel, your driver for this evening." Victoria barely glanced at him as she slid into the back seat. Her silk evening gown rustling against the leather, she was already scrolling through her phone, checking the guest list one more time. Senators, business moguls, celebrities, all the right people would be there. "Just get me to the Grand Meridian as quickly as possible," she said, not looking up from her screen. "And please, no small talk." "I have calls to make?" Daniel nodded quietly and got back into the driver's seat. As he pulled into traffic, Victoria's phone rang. It was her friend Patricia, another wealthy socialite who would be at the gala. "Patricia, darling." Victoria's voice shifted into that bright, performative tone she used at social events. "Yes, I'm on my way now." "Oh, you won't believe the week I've had. I had to let go of another housekeeper." "Can you believe it? That's the third one this year." She laughed, a sharp sound that filled the car. Daniel kept his eyes on the road, but his hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "I mean, honestly, Patricia, it's like they don't teach work ethic anymore." She actually asked for Sundays off. Can you imagine? I told her, "Darling, if you wanted weekends, you should have gotten a different job." Some people just don't understand how the real world works. The traffic light ahead turned red, and Daniel brought the car to a smooth stop. In the rearview mirror, he could see Victoria gesturing animatedly as she talked, her massive diamond ring catching the light. "Oh, and don't even get me started on the new gardener," Victoria continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "The man has no sense of creativity. I showed him a picture from a magazine, a simple topiary design, and he had the nerve to tell me it would take months to achieve." "Months. I swear, Patricia. Good help is impossible to find these days." Daniel noticed the GPS showing heavy traffic on their current route. There was construction up ahead that would add at least 15 minutes to their journey. He knew a better way, a route that would save them time. He cleared his throat gently. "Mrs. Ashford, excuse me, but there's construction on 5th Avenue. If we take Riverside Drive instead, we can avoid the backup and get you there faster." The car went silent. Victoria's eyes lifted from her phone screen for the first time since entering the vehicle. In the rearview mirror, Daniel could see her expression harden. "Patricia, let me call you back," she said, her voice suddenly cold. She ended the call and leaned forward slightly, her eyes fixed on the back of Daniel's head. "I'm sorry, did I ask for your input?" Daniel kept his voice calm and professional. "No, ma'am. I just thought, that's the problem," Victoria interrupted, her words sharp as glass. "You thought? I didn't hire you to think. I hired you to drive. That's it. Your job is to take me where I tell you to go, when I tell you to go there. Is that clear?" "Yes, ma'am. Perfectly clear." "Good," Victoria said, settling back into her seat. But she wasn't done. The frustration of her week, the pressure of maintaining her social standing, all of it came pouring out onto this stranger who had dared to speak when not spoken to. "You know what your problem is?" she said, her voice taking on a lecturing tone. "People like you always think you know better. You think that just because you've driven these streets a few times, you understand them better than someone like me. But let me tell you something about life." Daniel said nothing, focusing on the road ahead as they inched forward in traffic. There are people who lead, and there are people who follow. People who make decisions and people who carry them out. That's just how the world works. Some of us are meant to be in the back seat, and some of us, she paused dramatically, are meant to be in the front seat, literally and figuratively. She laughed at her own joke, but it was a cold sound, empty of real humor. And the sooner people accept their place in the world, the happier they'll be. Trust me, I'm doing you a favor by being honest. You should be grateful you have a job at all. Do you know how many people would love to have steady work like this? To drive around in nice cars even if they're not your own? Daniel's jaw clenched, but he remained silent. In the side mirror, Victoria could see his profile, stoic and unmoved. This only irritated her more. "Are you even listening to me?" "Yes, ma'am." "Every word. Then respond when someone of my position is speaking to you. It's called respect. Daniel took a slow breath. I understand your perspective, Mrs. Ashford. My perspective? Victoria let out a sharp laugh. It's not a perspective, young man. It's reality. I've built a $40 million real estate empire from the ground up. I employ over 200 people. I sit on the boards of 3 major charities. What have you done with your life? Drive cars? The traffic finally started moving, and Daniel navigated through it smoothly, his years of experience evident in every movement. But Victoria wasn't paying attention to his skill. She was too caught up in her own sense of superiority. Let me guess, she continued, her voice dripping with condescension. You probably had big dreams once, didn't you? Everyone does when they're young. But then life happens and you realize that dreams don't pay the bills. So here you are, driving people like me around. People who actually made something of themselves. She pulled out a compact mirror and checked her makeup, apparently satisfied with her little speech. I'm not trying to be cruel, she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. I'm being realistic. The world needs drivers, waiters, housekeepers, all of that. Not everyone can be at the top. Someone has to be at the bottom. That's just basic economics. Daniel made a turn onto Madison Avenue, the towers of the city rising around them like steel giants. The Grand Meridian Hotel was just 10 minutes away now. 10 minutes and he'd be free of this woman and her poisonous words. But Victoria wasn't finished yet. You know what I tell people? She asked, not waiting for an answer. I tell them that dignity comes from accepting your station in life and doing your job well. Don't try to rise above your abilities. Don't pretend to be something you're not. Just stay in your lane, do what you're told, and everything will work out fine. She leaned back against the leather seat, a satisfied smile on her face, completely unaware that in just a few short hours, every word she'd just spoken would come back to haunt her in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. The Mercedes glided through the city streets, carrying a woman who thought she knew everything about the world, and a man who knew far more than she could ever guess. The Mercedes pulled up to the grand entrance of the Meridian Hotel, and Victoria's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The cold, sharp woman who had spent the last 20 minutes berating her driver transformed into someone warm and gracious. It was like watching an actress step onto a stage. Daniel opened her door and she stepped out onto the red carpet with a dazzling smile, not even acknowledging him with a glance. She simply walked away, her heels clicking against the pavement, leaving him standing there by the car. Mrs. Ashford, over here. A photographer called out and she turned, posing perfectly, her hand on her hip, her smile bright and practiced. Daniel watched her for just a moment before getting back into the driver's seat. He sat there quietly, his hands resting on the steering wheel, taking slow, deep breaths. Then he reached for his phone and made a call. Hey, it's me, he said softly. Yeah, I'm here. I'll be ready in about an hour. Make sure everything is set up exactly as we discussed. He paused, listening. No, it's fine. Really. This is exactly why I'm doing this. Inside the hotel, Victoria was in her element. The ballroom was breathtaking, with crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Round tables draped in white linen filled the space, each decorated with elaborate centerpieces of white roses and gold accents. The walls were lined with silent auction items, expensive paintings, and luxury vacation packages. Victoria, darling. Patricia rushed over, air-kissing both of Victoria's cheeks. She was dripping in diamonds, her dress probably costing more than most people's cars. Patricia, you look absolutely stunning, Victoria said, though her eyes were already scanning the room, calculating who else was there, who she needed to talk to. Have you seen the auction items this year? Patricia gushed. There's a week in the French Riviera, and oh my God, there's an original Picasso sketch. Victoria barely listened. She was watching Senator Morrison across the room, laughing with a group of tech executives. She needed to talk to him before the night was over. There was a property deal she wanted to discuss. Victoria Ashford, as I live and breathe. A booming voice made her turn. It was Harold Chen, the chairman of the charity board. A distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and warm eyes. Harold, what a wonderful event you've put together, Victoria said, shaking his hand firmly. Well, we couldn't do it without generous supporters like yourself, Harold replied. Your donation this year was incredibly generous. $25,000. That will help fund 3 full scholarships for underprivileged students. Victoria smiled graciously. though inside she was calculating the tax deduction. It's the least I could do. Education is so important, especially for those who don't have the same opportunities we had. She said it perfectly, with just the right amount of sincerity. Harold beamed at her. That's exactly the spirit of this award tonight, he said. The Humanitarian of the Year isn't just about money. It's about recognizing someone who truly understands the importance of giving back, of lifting others up. Victoria nodded, accepting the praise as if it were her birthright. They chatted for a few more minutes before Harold excused himself to greet other guests. The evening continued in this fashion. Victoria floated from conversation to conversation, each interaction perfectly calibrated. She laughed at the right moments, looked concerned when appropriate, and always made sure people knew about her accomplishments, her real estate empire, her charity work, her exclusive social connections. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Victoria grabbed a glass and took a sip, surveying her kingdom. This was her world. These were her people. Everyone here understood success, understood power, understood that some people were simply meant for more. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The event coordinator's voice rang out through the ballroom. Dinner will be served shortly, and we have a wonderful evening planned for you. Victoria found her table near the front, right next to the stage. The place cards were written in elegant calligraphy. She was seated with other major donors, people who had given tens of thousands of dollars. She exchanged pleasantries with them, all of them speaking in that particular language of the wealthy, where everything was fabulous and absolutely divine. Dinner was served. Grilled salmon with some kind of fancy sauce, roasted vegetables arranged like art on the plate, a tiny portion that cost probably $50 per person. Victoria ate delicately, continuing to network between bites. After dinner, the lights dimmed and Harold took the stage. The program was beginning. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 20th Annual Lighthouse Charity Gala. Harold's voice boomed through the microphone as applause filled the room. Tonight we celebrate not just our accomplishments, but the generous spirits who make our mission possible. We've provided scholarships to over 500 students, funded 3 community centers, and created countless opportunities for young people who simply needed someone to believe in them. More applause. Victoria clapped along, her mind already on her acceptance speech. But before we get to our awards, Harold continued, his face lighting up with excitement, we have a very special surprise for you tonight. As many of you know, the Lighthouse Charity is dedicated to helping young people from all backgrounds achieve their dreams, regardless of their circumstances. And sometimes those dreams take people on the most unexpected journeys. Victoria took another sip of champagne, only half listening now. She wondered if her speech was too long. Maybe she should cut out the part about her childhood. Keep it focused on the future. Tonight, Harold said, his voice dropping to create anticipation, we are honored to have with us a performer who embodies everything our charity stands for. Someone who proves that talent and dedication can come from anywhere, that brilliance doesn't discriminate based on background or circumstance. A murmur of interest rippled through the crowd. Victoria straightened slightly in her chair. She did enjoy good entertainment. This performer has graced some of the most prestigious stages in the world: Carnegie Hall, the Sydney Opera House, the Royal Albert Hall in London. He's won the Van Cliburn International Piano Competition, one of the most prestigious awards in classical music. He's performed for heads of state and has been called a once-in-a-generation talent by the New York Times. Victoria found herself genuinely curious now. A world-class pianist? That was impressive, even by her standards. But here's what makes tonight so special, Harold continued, his eyes twinkling. This remarkable young man recently took a year away from performing. Not because of injury or burnout, but because he wanted to understand the world differently. He wanted to experience what he calls ordinary life. He worked in restaurants. He worked in bookstores. He even worked as a driver. Victoria's champagne glass paused halfway to her lips. He did this because he's writing a book about dignity, about respect, about how we treat people regardless of their job title. He believes that every person has inherent worth, and he wanted to experience firsthand how society treats those in service positions. The champagne glass trembled slightly in Victoria's hand. Ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to introduce to you, performing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, the internationally acclaimed concert pianist and Juilliard graduate Daniel Chen. The spotlight swung to the side of the stage. illuminating a figure walking confidently toward the grand piano. The ballroom erupted in applause. Victoria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. It was him, her driver, the man she had spent 20 minutes belittling, insulting, putting in his place. The man she had told to stay in his lane, to accept his station in life. He was walking onto the stage in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking every bit like the accomplished artist he was. And as he sat down at the piano bench and adjusted the microphone, his eyes swept across the audience and landed, for just a brief moment, on her. He smiled, a small, knowing smile. Then his fingers touched the keys, and the first notes of Rachmaninoff filled the air, beautiful and haunting and absolutely perfect. Victoria sat frozen in her chair, her face burning with shame, unable to move, unable to breathe, as the truth of what she had done crashed over her like a wave. The music swept through the ballroom like a living thing, rising and falling, soft then powerful, gentle then commanding. Daniel's fingers moved across the keys with the kind of grace that only comes from years of dedication, from countless hours of practice, from genuine love of the art. Victoria couldn't look away. She sat there, pieces of broken glass still scattered around her feet, completely frozen. A waiter had rushed over with a towel, cleaning up the mess, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the stage, on the man she had dismissed so completely just an hour ago. The music built to a crescendo, and she watched his whole body move with it, leaning into the dramatic passages, pulling back for the tender moments. This wasn't just technical skill. This was mastery. This was someone who had spent a lifetime perfecting something beautiful. Around her, people were mesmerized. Patricia had tears streaming down her face, not even bothering to wipe them away. Senator Morrison sat with his eyes closed, his head moving slightly to the rhythm. An elderly woman at the next table had her hand over her heart, completely lost in the performance. But Victoria felt something different. With each note, with each beautiful phrase of music, she felt smaller. Every insult she'd thrown at him replayed in her mind. You're meant to be in the front seat. Some people are meant to serve. Stay in your lane. The words echoed in her head, louder than the music, more discordant than any wrong note could ever be. How many times had she done this? Not just tonight, but throughout her life. How many people had she dismissed, looked down upon, treated as less than human because of their job, their position, their circumstances? The music shifted into a softer passage, delicate and haunting. Daniel's face was peaceful, completely absorbed in the moment. There was no anger there, no bitterness, just pure, honest expression through his art. Victoria's hands were shaking. She clasped them together in her lap, trying to steady herself, but it didn't help. Her carefully constructed world was cracking, and she could feel it crumbling around her. The woman sitting next to her leaned over and whispered, "Isn't he incredible? I heard he turned down a contract with the Berlin Philharmonic to do this project of his. Can you imagine? Giving up that kind of opportunity just to understand people better." Victoria nodded mutely, unable to form words. "And the book he's writing," the woman continued, "it's supposed to be about how we treat service workers, about dignity and respect. I think it's brilliant. We all need that reminder, don't we? That every person matters regardless of what they do for a living." Each word was like a knife. Victoria wanted to stand up, to run out of the ballroom to escape this moment. But she couldn't move. She was trapped in her chair, trapped by her own shame, forced to face what she had done. The final movement of the concerto began, building toward its powerful conclusion. The notes cascaded like water, like light, filling every corner of the massive room. People were on the edge of their seats now, completely captivated. And then, with a final, triumphant chord, it was over. The silence lasted only a heartbeat before the ballroom erupted. People leaped to their feet, applauding wildly, cheering, shouting, "Bravo!" Patricia was openly sobbing now, clapping so hard her hands must have hurt. Even the waiters along the walls were applauding, genuine smiles on their faces. Daniel stood and bowed, gracious and humble despite the thunderous response. The applause went on and on, wave after wave of appreciation. Victoria stood with everyone else because what else could she do? But her hands barely moved. She felt like she was watching herself from far away, like this was happening to someone else. Daniel bowed again, then gestured to the orchestra members who had accompanied him, making sure they received recognition too. The gesture was so genuinely kind, so thoughtful, that Victoria felt tears burning in her eyes. Finally, after what seemed like forever, the applause began to die down. Daniel left the stage and Harold returned to the microphone, beaming. "Wasn't that extraordinary?" Harold said, his voice thick with emotion. "And what makes it even more special is that Daniel volunteered his performance tonight completely free of charge. Every penny that would have gone to his fee will instead go directly to our scholarship fund." More applause. Victoria sat back down heavily, feeling dizzy. "Now," Harold continued, "before we move on to our awards, I want to share something that Daniel told me earlier today. He said that in his year of working ordinary jobs, he learned more about humanity than in all his years of formal education. He said that the kindness or cruelty people show to waiters, drivers, cleaners tells you everything you need to know about their character. That how we treat people when we think they can't do anything for us reveals who we really are." Victoria's face burned. She was absolutely certain that everyone in the room was looking at her, though rationally she knew they weren't. They had no idea, but she knew, and Daniel knew. The awards portion of the evening began. Harold presented several recognitions, scholarships to deserving students who gave heartfelt speeches about their dreams. Victoria barely heard any of it. Her mind was spinning, replaying the car ride over and over, seeing her cruelty through new eyes. "And now," Harold said, and Victoria's stomach dropped, "we come to our highest honor of the evening, the Humanitarian of the Year Award. This award goes to someone who has demonstrated exceptional commitment to helping others, someone who embodies the values of compassion, generosity, and respect for all people." Victoria felt sick. She couldn't accept this award. Not now. Not after what she'd done. Not after what she'd revealed about herself. This year's recipient has donated generously to our cause and has been a vocal supporter of education access for all. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating Victoria Ashford. The applause was polite, warm. People smiled at her. Patricia squeezed her arm excitedly. Victoria stood on shaking legs and made her way to the stage. Each step felt like walking through water. The stage lights were blinding. She took the Crystal Award from Harold, shook his hand and turned to face the microphone. She had a speech prepared. 5 minutes of carefully crafted words about giving back, about the importance of education, about her commitment to making a difference. It was printed on a card in her clutch. But as she looked out at the audience, at all these people who thought they knew her, who thought she was someone worthy of recognition, the words died in her throat. In the back of the ballroom near the exit, she saw Daniel. He was standing quietly, still in his tuxedo, watching, not with anger, not with smugness or satisfaction at her discomfort, just watching with those same kind eyes he'd had when he opened her car door. Victoria opened her mouth to speak. The audience waited expectantly. She began, and her voice cracked. She cleared her throat. "I'm honored to receive this award. Truly honored." She paused. The speech was right there in her mind. All she had to do was deliver it, smile, accept the applause, and sit back down. Pretend everything was fine. Pretend she was the person they thought she was. But as she stood there, holding that Crystal Award that suddenly felt heavy as stone, looking out at Daniel's calm, knowing face, Victoria realized something that shook her to her core. She had a choice to make. Right now. Right here. She could pretend or she could be honest. Her hands tightened on the award and she took a deep breath. "Actually," she said, her voice stronger now, "there's something I need to say." "Something important?" The ballroom went completely silent. Victoria could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Every eye was on her, waiting, curious about what she was going to say. "I don't deserve this award," she said quietly into the microphone. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Patricia's mouth fell open. Harold looked genuinely shocked. But Victoria kept going because if she stopped now, she'd lose her courage. "I came here tonight feeling very proud of myself," she continued, her voice getting steadier. "I donated $25,000 to this charity, and I thought that made me a good person. I thought writing a check was enough. I thought that because I give money to help people I've never met, that somehow made me compassionate." She looked down at the Crystal Award in her hands, its facets catching the light. "But about an hour ago, I spent 20 minutes in a car being absolutely cruel to another human being. Not physically, not with violence, but with words, with contempt, with the kind of casual cruelty that people like me sometimes show to people we think are beneath us. The silence in the room was deafening now. People were glancing at each other, unsure where this was going. Victoria saw Patricia's face, a mixture of shock and horror. "My driver tonight," Victoria said, her voice breaking slightly. "I didn't even look at him when I got in the car. I told him not to speak unless spoken to. When he tried to help me by suggesting a better route, I told him he wasn't paid to think. I told him that some people are meant to lead and some are meant to follow. I told him to stay in his lane and accept his place in the world." She had to pause, swallowing hard against the tears threatening to spill. "And then I came in here, and I smiled and laughed and accepted everyone's praise. I walked around talking about the importance of giving back, of helping the less fortunate, of creating opportunities for those who don't have them, all while treating an actual human being like he was nothing, like he was invisible, like his only value was in serving me." Victoria finally looked up, her eyes finding Daniel in the back of the room. That driver was Daniel Chen, the man who just performed for us, the brilliant, accomplished, kind person who volunteered his extraordinary talent tonight for free, while I stood here accepting an award for my generosity. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Heads turned looking toward Daniel. He remained still, his expression unreadable. "I don't know what's worse," Victoria said, tears now flowing freely down her face. "That I treated him that way, or that if he had really been just a driver, I would have thought my behavior was perfectly acceptable. That's the truth I have to face. I didn't respect him because of his job. I saw the uniform, the position, and I decided he didn't deserve basic human dignity." She set the award down on the podium with a soft clink. "This award is supposed to go to a humanitarian. But humanitarianism isn't about money. It's not about tax deductions or social status or getting your name on a plaque. It's about seeing every single person as valuable. It's about treating the driver with the same respect you'd give a senator. It's about understanding that worth isn't measured by job titles or bank accounts." Victoria wiped her eyes, mascara probably streaking down her face, but she didn't care anymore. "I've spent my whole life climbing ladders and building empires and collecting awards. And somehow I convinced myself that success meant I was better than other people, that I had earned the right to look down. But standing here now, I realize I've been poor in the ways that actually matter. Poor in kindness, poor in humility, poor in basic human decency." She looked directly at Daniel again. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper but carried perfectly by the microphone. "I'm so deeply sorry. Not because you turned out to be successful and accomplished, but because I should never have treated anyone that way. Regardless of who they were or what they did for a living, you deserved better. Every person deserves better." The ballroom remained silent. Victoria picked up the award one more time. "I can't accept this. I haven't earned it. Maybe someday, if I work really hard at becoming a better person, I might deserve recognition like this. But not today. Not yet." She turned to Harold, pressing the award into his hands. "Give it to someone who actually lives these values, not just someone who writes checks." Then, without waiting for a response, Victoria walked off the stage. Her legs felt shaky, and she could feel hundreds of eyes on her back, but she kept walking. She moved through the tables, past the shocked faces, past Patricia, who was staring at her like she'd never seen her before. She walked straight to the back of the ballroom, straight to Daniel. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Victoria couldn't read his expression. She had no idea what he was thinking, what he was feeling. She wouldn't blame him if he hated her. She hated herself right now. "Could we talk?" she asked quietly. "Please?" "I'll understand if you don't want to, but I'm asking anyway." Daniel studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "There's a terrace outside. It's quieter." He led her through a side door, and suddenly they were outside in the cool night air. The city stretched out before them, millions of lights twinkling in the darkness. The sounds of the gala were muted here, distant. Victoria wrapped her arms around herself, more from emotion than cold. "I meant what I said in there," she began. "Every word. And I need you to know that I'm not apologizing because you're accomplished or famous or talented. I'm apologizing because what I did was wrong, period. I'm apologizing because you deserved better. Because every person deserves better." Daniel leaned against the railing, looking out at the city. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle. "Do you know why I did this?" he asked. "In this whole year of working regular jobs?" Victoria shook her head. "My grandmother raised me," Daniel said. "She worked as a housekeeper for wealthy families her entire life. Some of them were kind to her. But many of them weren't. They treated her like furniture. Like she was just part of the house, there to serve, not worth a second thought." He turned to look at Victoria. She used to come home some days just exhausted. Not from the physical work, though that was hard too, but from the emotional weight of being invisible, of being talked about like she wasn't in the room, of being treated as less than human because of what she did for a living. Victoria felt fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. She never became bitter, though, Daniel continued. She always said that how people treated her told her everything about who they were, not who she was. She said that true character shows in how you treat people who can't do anything for you. She sounds like an amazing woman, Victoria whispered. She was. She died 3 years ago. Daniel's voice caught slightly. Before she passed, she made me promise something. She said, "Daniel, you have gifts and opportunities I never had. Promise me you'll use them to remind people that we're all human, that we all matter." He pulled out his phone and showed Victoria a photo, an elderly woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, her arm around a younger Daniel. This project, this book I'm writing, it's for her. It's to honor her life, her dignity, everything she taught me about seeing people. Victoria couldn't speak. She was crying too hard now, great heaving sobs that she couldn't control. Every conversation, every interaction I've had this year, I've recorded notes about. Daniel said quietly, "Our conversation tonight, what you said to me, it was one of the hardest ones. But you know what you did just now up on that stage?" Victoria looked at him through her tears. "That took real courage," he said. "It would have been so easy to just accept the award, to pretend everything was fine. But you chose honesty. You chose accountability. That's not nothing, Victoria. That's actually really important. But I hurt you," she said. "I was cruel." "Yes, you were," Daniel agreed, not sugarcoating it. "And it did hurt. Not because of my ego, but because it reminded me of how my grandmother was treated. But here's the thing about mistakes. They're only truly wasted if we don't learn from them." He straightened up from the railing. "The question isn't whether you messed up tonight. You did. The question is what you're going to do with that knowledge tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that." 6 months later, Victoria stood in the kitchen of the Lighthouse Community Center, washing dishes alongside 3 teenagers who were part of the after-school program. Her hands were red from the hot water, and her back ached a little. But she was smiling. "Miss Victoria, you missed a spot," said Jordan, a 15-year-old with braces and a mischievous grin pointing at a plate. "Where?" Victoria asked, holding it up to the light. "Got you," Jordan laughed. "It's clean. I just wanted to see if you'd actually check." Victoria laughed too, flicking some soap bubbles at him playfully. "You're trouble, you know that?" "That's what everyone tells me," Jordan said. But he was grinning as he dried the dishes she handed him. This had become Victoria's Tuesday routine. Every week she spent 4 hours at the center, helping with whatever was needed. Sometimes it was dishes. Sometimes it was tutoring kids with their homework. Sometimes it was just sitting and listening to teenagers talk about their lives, their dreams, their struggles. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't something she could put on social media for praise. Nobody was giving her awards for it. And that was exactly the point. "All right, kitchen's clean," said Melissa, the program director, walking in with her clipboard. "You 3 are free to go. Jordan, don't forget you have that college prep workshop tomorrow." "I'll be there," Jordan promised, giving Victoria a quick high five before heading out with his friends. Melissa waited until the kids were gone, then turned to Victoria with a warm smile. "You know, when you first started volunteering here, I wasn't sure what to expect. I've seen a lot of wealthy donors come through, take some photos, and never return." Victoria dried her hands on a towel, feeling a familiar pang of shame. "That used to be me," she admitted. "Write a check, show up for the photo opportunity, feel good about myself, and leave." "But you're different now," Melissa said. "The kids can tell. They trust you. That's not easy to earn." Victoria thought about Jordan, who'd been so quiet and guarded when they first met. It had taken weeks before he opened up about his struggles at school, about his mom working 2 jobs, about feeling like he had to be tough all the time. Now he joked with her, asked her advice, even invited her to his school basketball games. "They've taught me more than I've taught them," Victoria said honestly. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Lunch tomorrow?" "I miss you." Victoria smiled and typed back, "Can't tomorrow, volunteering. How about Saturday?" Things had changed with her old social circle too. Some people, like Patricia, had been surprisingly supportive of her transformation. Others had quietly distanced themselves, uncomfortable with her honesty about her past behavior. A few had even gotten defensive, as if her admission of wrongdoing somehow judged them too. She'd lost some friends. But she'd gained something more valuable, she realized. Peace. Actual, genuine peace with herself. Victoria left the community center and drove across town to her office. She still ran her real estate business, still closed deals and managed properties, but the way she operated had changed fundamentally. Her assistant, Robert, greeted her at the door. He was in his early 20s, working his way through college. "How was the community center?" he asked, taking her coat. "Good. Really good," Victoria said. "How was your day? Did that client call back about the Riverside property?" They talked for a few minutes about business. But Victoria made sure to really listen, to ask about his classes, to remember that Robert was a whole person with dreams and goals, not just someone who answered her phones. After Robert left for the day, Victoria sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She'd been working on something for weeks now, something that felt important. It was a new initiative for her company, a program to provide housing assistance and job training for people transitioning out of homelessness. It wasn't going to make her money. In fact, it would probably cost her quite a bit. But that wasn't the point anymore. Her phone rang. She smiled when she saw the caller ID. "Daniel, hi." "Hey, Victoria, how are you?" His voice was warm, friendly. Over the past 6 months, they'd developed an unexpected friendship. "I'm good. Just working on that housing program I told you about." "How's the book coming?" "Actually, that's why I'm calling," Daniel said. "It's done. The publisher wants to release it in 3 months. Victoria's heart skipped a beat. The book. His book about dignity and respect and how people treat service workers. The book that would include their story. "That's amazing, Daniel. Congratulations." "There's something I want to talk to you about, though," he continued. "I included our story. The whole thing. What you said to me in the car. What happened at the gala, all of it." Victoria swallowed hard. "Okay. But I also included what happened after. Your apology. Your transformation. Everything I've seen you do over these past 6 months. And there's a section where I talk about how rare it is for someone to actually change, to really look at themselves honestly and do the hard work of becoming better." "Daniel, you don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted gently, "because your story is important too. Not the first part, but this part. The part where you chose to grow. People need to see that it's possible to mess up badly and still become better." Victoria felt tears prickling her eyes again. She seemed to cry a lot these days, but they were different tears than before. Cleaner somehow. "I'm going to include your full name," Daniel said. "I wanted your permission first. I know it might be difficult having people know what you said that night." Victoria thought about her reputation, her business, what people would think. The old Victoria would have panicked, would have tried to stop publication, would have worried about image and status. "Use my name," she said firmly. "If it helps even one person recognize their own behavior and change, it's worth it." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I can't erase what I did, Daniel. But maybe by being honest about it, by showing that change is possible, something good can come from it." They talked for a few more minutes, making plans to meet for coffee later that week, before hanging up. Victoria stood and walked to her office window, looking out at the city lights. So much had changed. She'd stepped down from several charity boards, recognizing that she needed to do the actual work before claiming leadership positions. She'd started paying all her employees more, giving them better benefits, treating them with real respect. She'd also started therapy, working through why she'd felt the need to look down on others in the first place. It turned out that making others feel small had been a way of making herself feel big, of hiding her own insecurities behind a wall of superiority. Her business hadn't suffered. If anything, it had improved. Her employees were more loyal, more motivated. Word had spread that she was a good person to work for, and she was attracting better talent. But more importantly, she could look at herself in the mirror now without flinching. 3 months later, Daniel's book hit the shelves. Worth, Rediscovering Dignity in How We Treat Each Other quickly became a bestseller. Victoria's story was in Chapter 7, told with honesty but also with compassion. The response was mixed. Some people criticized her harshly for her past behavior. Others sent her messages of support, sharing their own stories of transformation. A few even thanked her, saying that reading about her journey had inspired them to examine their own behavior. Victoria handled it all with grace, never defending her past actions, always pointing toward the importance of growth and change. She was invited to speak at the community center's annual fundraiser. Standing at the podium, Looking out at a room full of people, many of them volunteers and workers and everyday folks, she felt genuinely comfortable. A year ago, she began, I stood on a stage and gave back an award because I realized I hadn't earned it. Tonight, I'm not here to receive anything. I'm here to say thank you. Thank you to this community for teaching me what really matters. Thank you for showing me that worth isn't about wealth or status or accomplishments. It's about how we treat each other, especially when we think nobody's watching. She saw Daniel in the audience, sitting with his family. He gave her a small nod of encouragement. I spent most of my life climbing, Victoria continued, always reaching for the next achievement, the next award, the next level of success. And I missed the point entirely. Real success isn't measured in dollars or accolades. It's measured in relationships, in kindness, in the small moments of human connection that we create every single day. After the speech, people came up to talk to her, not to network or make business connections, but to really talk, to share stories, to connect as humans. Jordan found her in the crowd, now 16 and taller than her. That was good, Miss Victoria, he said. Real good. Thanks, Jordan.
How's school going? Better.
I actually like my English class now. We're reading that book, the one your friend wrote. Daniel's book? Yeah. We had to write an essay about respect. I wrote about you, actually. About how you show up every week and treat us like we matter. Victoria hugged him, not caring that he squirmed a little the way teenagers do. Later, driving home through the city streets, Victoria thought about that night a year ago. About the Mercedes, about her cruelty, about the performance that changed everything. She'd lost some things. Her false sense of superiority. Her shallow friendships. Her ability to feel good about herself without actually doing good. But she'd gained so much more. Purpose. Peace. Real relationships.